So I think the goals for today, introducing the results of our 2022 survey on employee engagement and the Great Resignation, and then really having a discussion around how we can improve engagement to increase retention and improve overall employee attraction. So we got a good introduction. I'm Mike Durgis, partner with Sigred Solutions. I'm admittedly a recovering consultant. 10 years in international strategy consulting with a management recruiting firm and leadership advisory. We focus on really helping great employers attract, retain, develop amazing talent. So a little bit about the survey. So this is our third annual survey. Started in 2020, like 2 weeks before shutdown. So we got everything launched, we were out there, and then the whole world blew up. We asked then about COVID 2021. We focused a lot on how employers were responding to COVID, what the employee perception of that was. And then this year, the focus is on the Great Resignation. So are employees really looking to leave? Is it as bad as we've heard? And what are employees looking for when they do jump ship? This year's survey closed April 1st, so I mean we're not even 3 weeks into it. This is about as hot off the presses as you can get. So if you find typos or that's all on me, but it's all because we're kind of putting together for today. Let's see, get the right button. There we go. So let's talk a little bit about the Great Resignation. It's real. Anybody reads the paper? Yeah, okay, nobody reads papers anymore. But if you read the papers, you see the headlines. You quit, I quit, we all quit. There seem to be a little bit of fear-mongering out there. It makes for great type, great press that you hear it and creating a little bit of a sense of panic. But it's true. Others are calling it the Great Reassessment, maybe the Great Realignment, as your employees are thinking about, okay, what do I really want to do with my life, especially if you're getting up towards retirement age. You're thinking, well, maybe I don't want to go through something like this again. I'm going to leave now. We're actually seeing it with business owners as well, who've gone through now a couple of, traumatic events over the last couple of decades. And they're like, yeah, I'm ready to retire. I, again, don't want to see this happening again. But while people are leaving and employers are seeing this, this quitting trend, others are seeing it really as a great opportunity. And I think that's the message for everybody here today, is that there is an opportunity in this as employees are willing to talk about looking at new things. So data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Michigan, 3.1% of Michigan's workforce quit last year. That's one of the highest since they've been keeping records. In 2021, that meant that 1.5 million Michigan workers quit their jobs, a 20-year high. I'm sure some of you have experienced that, and that 1.5 means that some people have left the job multiple times, so you're cycling through people faster than hopefully you were in the past. Case in point, close family friend. Great job, liked the company. It was an hour commute. 18 months working from home. This was great, was in IT, and was actually more productive working from home. And I'm sure put probably an hour or 2 hour, back and forth into the company. But they decided to have a mandate. Everybody's coming back, middle of last year. No ifs, ands, or buts. You're coming back. So her last day was the week that they started everybody coming back into the office, and found something local. It's not a unique experience. We're kind of seeing that from the employee side and how employers are responding. We'll talk a little bit about that. But before we dive into the data, and I threatened this was going to be a little bit of interactive, from you all, I want to hear, any experiences that you want to bring up, any positive experiences that you've seen from the Great Resignation. Not enough coffee yet? Pardon me? Work from home. One of the interesting things we've seen, we'll talk a little bit about too, is manufacturing doesn't have that opportunity necessarily to work from home. So in some situations where you kind of get an us versus them mentality going, which can be counterproductive to the culture. But again, it's something that people want as you're asking. So we asked, just point blank, are you considering leaving your job? 40% for me is terrifying. I mean, if I look at, okay, 40% of the workforce is thinking about moving, that creates some issues. And there's a couple of options that manufacturers, employers in general have. And I've seen our clients taking all of them. One is the stick your head in the sand approach. I hear nothing, I see nothing, I'm just going to ignore it and hope it doesn't happen to me. There's the prayer model, which is, okay, I really am just going to pray that my best people don't leave. I'm not going to ask, I'm just going to hope that it doesn't happen. And then there's the action model, so really being proactive. And that means understanding why your people might be thinking about leaving. So that means asking, and that's what we did as part of this survey. We asked, following up to, if you're planning on leaving, why are you planning on leaving? Now, some of this is not going to be rocket science or earth-shattering for you. Compensation being number one, it's slightly over 50%. It's uncomfortable conversation having that around compensation, but it's true. But then honestly, there's that kind of dirty little secret that somebody who's been with you and been loyal with you for, let's say, 15 years is probably below market rate for what the rest of the industry. If you think of Jane, who's been there earning a cost of living advance every 2% every year, versus Julie, who may have jumped from 3 or 4 different jobs, but each time she moves, she's got 10%, 20% increase. She's up here, Jane's down here, and once Jane starts looking around, there's going to be some opportunities to make significant more money as she looks. And as much as she might love the company, $10,000, $20,000 it has a big impact. So there's going to be then sticker shock on the part of Jane's employer when Jane does make that move. But, oops, sorry, it's not all about the money. As we're talking with candidates, as we're talking with employers, you see these other issues which are really around that culture. So poor communication with my managers, poor communication from leadership. The culture's changed over the last 2 years. It's not the same company that I used to work for. I don't feel part of a team, part of that hybrid working from home aspect. And then I was actually surprised this was as low as it was, my manager. You always hear the trope that people don't leave their companies, they leave their managers. Although you could say, well, change culture, feeling part of the team, poor communication kind of rolls into that as well. But so yes, compensation's there, but it's not always the driver of why people are looking. And then you get down into the commute time, maybe being forced to be 100% on time, and very little on the vaccination requirement. By the time we asked that kind of horse had already left. And then we asked about specifics. So why, a little more detail. Why are you thinking about leaving? 30% of the responses were just variations on I'm burned out. 23 roughly were for personal reasons, caregiver issues, retirement, just looking for something different to do with their lives. 9% were lack of development opportunities. I don't see what I can do moving forward in the company. And then 9% were specifically calling out poor leadership, ethics, terrible leadership, for specific quotes if you want. And only 3% specifically called out compensation as a reason for leaving. So again, going back to that point where I think there are a lot of reasons underlying why employees are looking for other things. Yes, they could check multiple boxes. So yeah, so it doesn't add up to 100 if you're doing the math. Were you a consultant once too? Those were things I always loved doing. So. We also asked what's important to you for your next job. Obviously, compensation comes up, and while I will say that in all of the candidates that we talk to, it's very rare that somebody's going to make a jump back in pay. Occasionally it happens, but it's honestly, it's a rarity. But that is typically not the bulk of the conversation. The bulk of our conversation with candidates is around alignment with values, the communication of the company, how am I going to fit as I come into the company. And we're seeing that not just with millennials, which I guess all of you would expect to say, oh, millennials want to know what the, sorry, Aaron, want to see what the culture is like, but we're also seeing it with Gen X leaders, saying, okay, if I'm going to move now, I'm coming from a company where the culture wasn't what it was sold or the culture was changed, and now I want to make sure, first and foremost, that I'm a fit with that culture and that culture is a fit for me. In my recruiting days in consulting, I wasn't going to tell a story, but I will anyway, called it the Pittsburgh Airport Test. And as you're recruiting candidates, you're going to be, for consulting, it's an 80-hour week. You're going to, maybe not so much anymore, but 80-hour week. And you get to the Pittsburgh airport after a long, long week with your clients, and you find your flight's delayed by another couple hours. And you're there with your team. And you could either be, oh, wow, I get some time, personal time to talk with, with my colleagues. This is going to be great. Or you're like, oh, my God, I just want to. And that, if you don't have that cultural fit with the people you're working with, it's not going to be kind of comfortable for you going forward. And then commute, hybrid work schedule, not wanting to be 100% remote. We're seeing those come in at more of the middle manager, kind of junior manager roles. So if you're talking about senior manager, they're focused on the culture. The middle manager, junior managers are also focused on that, obviously, but the commute then plays a role. The hybrid work schedule plays a role in what they're looking for. More questions about what is important more specifically. 35% want flexibility. So to the point about can we create a flexible environment where what can they do from home, what can they do in the plant, opportunity to work more independently. That can still be done on the plant floor. How can we create those opportunities for more control in a sense over what you're doing? 24%, interestingly, want more training opportunities and advancement. Again, something that we talk about every year, but doesn't always translate into action. And then 80% are looking for, mentioned a little bit, that diversity, equity, inclusion, and a respect generally for the employees. And an understanding, I think, of in a sense, the trauma that we've all gone through over the last 2 years. Just as an example, we're working on a director of operations search now, and we've got, we had two really good candidates, and this talks to a bunch of things around the Great Resignation. They both were leaving their companies because of culture issues. They're like, yeah, no, management just doesn't get it. I'm out of here. And again, director level position. One of them then decided on the commute, that when he was coming in for an interview, he's like, yeah, no, this is too long for me. I'm going to back out. The other one, we interviewed him on a Thursday evening, presented him to the client on Friday. Client wanted to interview him personally on Monday, and by then he had 3 offers. It's moving that fast as well. This one was frankly depressing. Has your company done anything special to help you feel part of the culture? Primarily, during work from home, obviously, COVID. 53% of the respondents said that were working from home said no, our company did nothing. 53%. 19% did really what I kind of consider the bare minimum. They had some Zoom calls, they had some more staff meetings, so they increased a little bit. 13% had special in-person and or virtual events. So when it was safe to have things in person, they did some things in person. When it was virtual, they did some virtual team building events. And then 4% had kind of special wellness checks. So their managers actually called and said, "Hey, how are you doing? I'd love to find out, what's going on behind the scenes, kind of outside work." So my question for you all here is, if half of the companies are doing nothing, really, how hard would it be to do something that helps your culture, that helps your employees, helps your culture, helps your company stand out, really? And as I mentioned, Amy, John, Kevin, they're all, I think, going to have something to say on that as you go through the later presentations today. Okay, this is, I promised there was one eye candy chart. So this is, lots of color, and you can still, hopefully in the back row, can you still read it? Not bad. All right, so building your employer brand. I think the Great Resignation, as I mentioned, can be a great opportunity. It's really that moment where you guys can stand out and become an employer of choice in your region. And what does that mean? There's definitely a marketing component to it, but it's living your values and your culture. Do your employees know what your culture is? Is it a culture that they want to get behind? What makes you unique? How has, one of our survey in 2021 asked how important it was when you're looking for a new job, how important was the employer's response to COVID. And that was very, very important as they were looking for coming to a new job. They wanted to know, what did you do for your employees over the last 18 months? And so if you've got a story, if you can say, yeah, we did X, Y, and Z, that is really powerful. Communication, it's going to keep coming up. The communicate the why, especially during COVID, things were changing so rapidly that communication was changing rapidly, and your teams on the floor were thinking, these guys are idiots, they don't know what they're talking about, because they're changing from day to day. But those companies that got in front of that and said, hey, look, it's not fixed right now, we're doing what we know to do for the science, for the population, but here's why, and here's why it might change, and when it does change, or when it did change, here's why. Leadership training, we'll definitely talk about leadership training managers and how to manage a remote or a hybrid workforce. Building that team remotely is important. And then yes, compensation. Look at your market, and are you at market rate right now? Are you significantly below that? Because that will have an impact. Do you offer stay bonuses potentially, or really alternative recognition? I think there's a lot of things that kind of fall into this compensation aspect that you can do that don't cost a lot of money, and we'll talk a little bit about those as well. So let's talk a little bit about the engagement aspect of the employee engagement survey. So our satisfaction survey, okay, maybe I did have two eye candy charts. The way we looked, we talked about 12 motivators, and you can see the motivators on the right side there. And then we kind of, again, as a consultant, usually I like 2x2 matrices, but I branched out and went 3x3 on this one. Green means satisfaction. We've got along here. We've got importance. How satisfied are you with that motivator, and how important is that motivator to you? And the thought process behind that is, if they're satisfied and it's important to them, great, you're doing well, you're in that kind of green category. If they're not satisfied, but it's not particularly important to them, you're kind of, down here, maybe not an area of focus. Orange is kind of the before you get into the red, the next worst, if you will, or the lowest. And that's the areas where they're relatively satisfied somewhere in the middle, but it's very high importance to them. And my orange on orange background for some reason didn't work, so the orange categories, work-life balance, appropriate compensation, are on in white, breaking with my the color coding model. But so you can see we've got three that are really in the green, and that's job security, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of my thoughts behind those. The impact you're having on the organization, and feeling a valued member of the organization. The challenge of the job, am I feeling challenged? Am I getting significant responsibility or appropriate responsibility? Do I have opportunities for growth? Am I getting appropriate recognition? Those are kind of in that yellow quadrant there, or sector. And then, as I mentioned, the work-life balance, compensation. Are my goals clear? And my performance evaluations clear? The work environment, policies and procedures are all kind of in that orange section. So they're important, but we're not really feeling the love from the satisfaction side of things. And and here you can see kind of where that satisfaction is, and then the next chart shows the importance of it. So we'll see where growth comes in off the top. I can't tell you, but here what's interesting. So 2020, 2021, 2022. Kind of concerning is that movement of green, the reductions of green over the years. So more of these motivators are becoming kind of critical aspects for our employees, and you're seeing growth in the orange, a little bit growth in the yellow. Probably not surprising that compensation is the lowest for the last 2 years, and bottom three for all 3 years. And then job security I thought was interesting, but maybe not maybe intuitive as well, in that given the work environment, given what we're seeing in the news with labor shortages, employees are in that position where they think, yeah, okay, I think my job's, as long as, the economy doesn't tank and my employer continues to do good, I'm fairly secure here. They need more people than they can get at the moment. So that job security aspect. And I think that also ties in a little bit to having an impact. So I show up, and I don't know if, who's gone through like McDonald's, drive-throughs and says, sees the sign, thank the employee that's working, they showed up today, as opposed to taking out your frustration at the long line on them, because they're the ones that are there. So the employees that are showing up that have that job are having that impact, and I think consequently feeling the value. On the important side of things, so the same, color coding, but this is looking at that, importance. What are employees finding most important over the last 3 years? Interesting that work-life balance has moved up in 2021, 2022 from kind of a little bit lower. I think we talked about burnout a little bit in some of the comments. Being able to, especially if you're working that hybrid, being able to set boundaries and say, okay, this is when I'm working, this is when I'm not working. My boss likes to email me at 3 in the morning. I admit I do that, but that's just because I'm up. I don't expect an answer. But that email comes in and okay, now it creates a fire. The appropriate compensation in terms of importance has been number 2. Obviously, I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse on that one. And then the other interesting one for me was setting clear goals has jumped up from the last couple of years. So that communication aspect, and it's also moved into orange. So knowing what my goals are, knowing how I'm going to be kind of rewarded in a sense, has moved up. Also looked at it just from the manufacturing side. So we carved out the manufacturing folks, and whether you're in manufacturing working in the office or you're manufacturing working in production, just to see kind of what it looked like. For production, interesting, they're most satisfied with the impact they're having and their job security, again, likely due to that the labor market. For the office, work-life balance is number 1, but again, I think possibly the satisfaction, because there is some of that hybrid opportunity. And then supportive policies has moved up, which is kind of interesting. So employers are talking a little bit about about the policies. How can they make the workforce more comfortable, more engaged? Little deep dive into just the compensation, the recognition side of things. So, and this is in the pamphlet, the booklet that's out there as well. But for compensation, not a whole lot of daylight between whether you're in production or office or 2022 market as a whole. A little bit on the important side, but again, not significantly important. And all of them are kind of orange in that scale. But then if we look at the details in terms of what changes would increase your satisfaction with compensation. Obviously, the two, cost of living increases, marriage wage increases, that I don't think should be a shock for anybody in the room. But it's interesting, kind of tying into other conversations that we've had, the difference between bonuses and wage increases. So, when I was COO for the automotive supplier, the philosophy was you don't want to add, continually give wage increases, because that's then becomes a fixed cost, whereas your bonuses give you a little bit more flexibility to change things. The challenge is working with the employees. They remember the wage increases for some reason, and they don't remember the bonuses. So we were paying above market rates as a total, but you would still talk to folks and, well, I haven't had a wage increase in 2 years. Yeah, but you got all of these bonuses. And because I think the bonuses mentally, it's a one-time thing, you get it, you forget about it. The wage increases, you see it every single paycheck. And so we may be moving into a period of time where we need to look more at that. Well, we are moving, I think, into a period of time where we need to look at those increases on a wage side, not just the bonus side, because they aren't viewed the same. But thank you awards a little bit less. Feedback on local wages, they know what they can walk the street and find out what their competition is offering. And then we looked at recognition as well. I think there's a strong tie into recognition and overall compensation. And again, employees want cash, bonuses obviously, highest on that. And as mentioned, there's more desire for the merit increases over the one-time bonuses. But also being given a chance for growth came out in the conversations, in the comments. So wanting to be able to have that conversation about where can I grow, what can I do, how can I advance in my career, to the question earlier. And then interesting, for me anyway, private acknowledgement, private feedback was viewed very, very positively, and much more positively than public acknowledgement. Actually, I kind of fall into that category myself. I'd much prefer just a private acknowledgement than being put out in front of everybody. But it also ties in, I don't know if anybody has heard about the jury trial in Kentucky that happened last week, where a jury found for an employee $450,000 because the employee said he did not want a birthday party. It was a triggering event, didn't want a birthday party. The employer went and had a birthday party for him anyway, and then when he left, consequently fired him. And $450,000 because there was public acknowledgement when they knew that he wanted, if anything, private acknowledgement. So again, kind of asking what your employees are interested in can be important and maybe save some money. So takeaways. They're kind of as I see them, and love to get your feedback. I think the Great Resignation is an opportunity for everybody. There are things you can do to become that employer of choice, to grow your market, maybe take an unfair advantage in terms of the employees that you attract. Asking your employees is critical. We guess, we think we know what our employees want, but until we ask them, we don't really know. And so worst case is you're throwing money at something that's ineffective. Better case, I guess, is that no, maybe that's a better case. Worst case is you're doing something that's counterproductive and actually negatively impacting your engagement. And then acting on the results. So a lot of companies do surveys. They ask their employees. They don't provide feedback, and then they don't change anything. So then if they do ask a survey, ask the same questions a year from now, nothing's changed. Focus on taking the actions, focus on communicating the actions, which ties into communicate, communicate, communicate. We've gotten, I think, a lot better in communicating over the last 18 months, but there's still a lot of opportunity there.